everybody. This is now, we are going to move on to two-step equations, which is going to be the same process that we looked at in that first example. In our packets here, I've moved on to the next page here. We're on numbers 13, 14, 15, and 16. And we can see in this section that the equations, because we got the two-step equations, are going to be two steps versus just one thing. So on 13, let's take a look at what we can do. Again, we want to isolate the variable. So sometimes it's easiest on here. Let's just get that and realize we're going to get that alone. And then at the end, if I have something like 5 equals n, I can always flip that to n equals 5 using the reflexive property. So, or the symmetric property rather. Here, as I see, if I'm going to leave the green n alone, the first thing I need to do is that we want to do order of operations backwards. So instead of multiplying, dividing, add, subtracting, we want to get rid of the add, subtract, multiply, divide. So to get that 3 over the other side, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing with a plus 3. Negative 11 plus 3 is negative 8. I did not touch the n over 2. And negative 3 plus 2 is 0. Now we're left with a one-step equation that we had just solved. In order to get rid of this denominator, right here, we're going to have to multiply both sides by 2. And we're going to get negative 16 equals 8. And again, let's flip that around. Again, symmetric property again, not reflective, symmetric property. So let's flip that. Very good. Now, because we're getting to a bunch of different things, there's a few examples we can see. In 14, the first thing I notice is that the whole thing is divided by 2. In this 13 example, only this was divided by 2. Let me make this a little more clear so you can see it. Only this part was divided by 2. So I had to get rid of that negative 3. When I come over here to the 14, this 2 is divided the whole thing by 2. So my first step is a times 2 on both sides. And now it's real easy to see, okay, let's add 4. And then flip it around. Moving down, sometimes they're not as bad. Now, on 15, I'm going to ignore and let you guys try because there's not a lot of going on there. But on 16, we come to our first one where I see a distributive property. Probably something you guys all know, but 4 times 3, 4 times r. Again, something you guys probably know and have done, but it's good to review that. Now I can use my normal equation skills. Subtract 12 from both sides. Divide by 4. And flip. Now, we haven't done an example yet, so it might be helpful to have that, where let's check this. In order to check, all we want to do is substitution. But we do have our calculator available to us. So what I'm going to do here's our calculator. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take just this right side of the equation and enter it in as is. I'm going to do 4 parenthesis 3 plus, now I can't put an R in there, so I could try an X. Now the problem is our calculator is designed where this X actually represents something. So this will give us an answer of 12. But if I just type X in, X is telling me this is 0. So what your calculator is doing is 4 times 3 and 4 times 0, and that's why it's getting 12. So our calculator, we can't put a variable in here. But what we can do is do 4 times 3 and then do substitution. Instead of R or X, we're going to plug in -2. And when you do this, always use parentheses like this. Now when I hit enter, if my equation is correct, I'm going to get 4 as my answer. And I did, so I know for sure that that's the correct answer. That's a real good trick there, so we can do substitution on our calculator. Okay, as I move on to the next page, I don't see anything here that's going to be any different than the problems we just did. Let's do number 20 as just another review. So, the first thing I see on 20 is let's leave the X by itself. So let's get the 5 out of there. Those will cancel. Like so. We always want to leave the X till last. If necessary, we can flip it around. But in this case, we're not going to have to. Now we're going to do -128 divided by -8. And I should get 16 as an answer here. Okay. That will conclude two-steps equations. So, what have we learned? Two steps is just an extra step past one, but it's nothing that you guys haven't accomplished in the past. So, take a moment, let's finish these problems, and when you're ready, we'll move on to video 3.